On behalf of the dinner committee, we wish that you may have a most enjoyable evening as we gather together to break bread in honor of a man to whom our city, our province, and our nation owe a great deal. Very Reverend Patrick G. Malone, retiring President of Loyola of Montreal. He's a jolly good fellow. There's so many friends around. Nobody can deny. I got about 4 mics here anyway. May I now call on His Excellency, Most Reverend Leonard Crowley, Auxiliary Bishop of Montreal, to bless our meal.
Bless us, Lord, as we gather together at this testimonial dinner in honor of Father Malone and to express our deep gratitude to him. May your Spirit be with us as we express our gratitude to a leader who has helped to build up our community, especially in the field of education. May the sharing of this meal deepen the bond of love that unites us together and increase the friendship to the one who has directed us in many years, particularly at Loyola and in the field of education across Canada. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness, and we ask this blessing through God our Father. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have one brief announcement I'd like to make. For anyone unable to partake of our menu of the evening, there is an alternate menu. Ladies and gentlemen, with your permission and with real pleasure, I would like to introduce to you special guests of the evening who have joined with us in honoring Father Malone. Please do not stop eating, but we'd like to introduce these people to you. Firstly, I would like you to meet the nearest and dearest members of Father Malone's own family. Father Malone's sister and her husband, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Sautner. Would you please stand? Another sister of Father Malone and her husband, Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd Gamsby. Father Malone's, and as I could hear from the head table, younger brother and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Malone. Unfortunately, due to health reasons, Father's other brother, Mr. Hugh Malone, and his wife were unable to be with us here tonight. And I would also like to introduce those sitting at, these other people sitting at, I mixed that up a little bit. I'd like to introduce the rest of our head table immediately in front of us. General Frank Fleury, former chairman of the Board of Loyola, and Mrs. Fleury. Would you please stand? Mr. Fred McCaffrey, Honorary Consul General of Ireland, and Mrs. McCaffrey.
What's that name again?
The Honorable Claire Kirkland Casgrain, Judge of the Provincial Court. Mr. and Mrs. Maitland Souls, and I'm sure as many of you know, Mrs. Souls has been Father Malone's secretary since he arrived at Loyola. And unfortunately, somehow tonight, in the mad crush of people, Dr. J. Regis Duffy, Dean of Science of the University of Prince Edward Island, and Mrs. Duffy were supposed to be sitting at this table, but they are sitting somewhere else. Would they kindly stand? We're sorry, Doctor. And also Reverend Gerald McGuigan, S.J., former chairman of the Board of Loyola. Father McGuigan, would you please stand? And now, let me introduce our special guests at the long table. But would you please be good enough to hold your applause until they have all been introduced. Beginning on my extreme right, Father Steve Dubas, Superior of the Loyola Jesuit Community. Would you stand, please, Father, and remain standing until the whole head table has been introduced. Mr. James Bellin, City Councillor for NDG and representative of the Mayor here tonight. Miss Debbie Perzow, escort of the Loyola Student President. Well, I see we got something mixed up here already. Oh, no, we don't know. Please stand, Debbie. Mr. Erwin Katzoff, co-president of the Loyola Student Association. Mr. Ron Boucher, president of the Loyola Alumni Association. Mr. C.A. Duff, chairman of the board of Concordia. Mrs. Julie McDonald, representative of the Loyola Evening Students. Dr. Owen Carrigan, president of St. Mary's University. Mrs. John W. O'Brien. Mr. H.J. Hemmons, QC, Chancellor of Concordia University. My wife, Mrs. Dolores Wilson. I did know her first name. Mr. Tim Slattery, who I'll introduce later, QC. Mrs. Harry Stern. His Excellency Patrick Power, Ambassador of Ireland. His Excellency Bishop Leonard Crowley, Auxiliary Bishop of Montreal. Mrs. Warren Allman. Our honored guest, I think we will say more about him a little later. Starting on my extreme left, Very Reverend Terry Walsh, S.J., Provincial of the Jesuit Province of Upper Canada. Mrs. Ron Boucher. Honorable Warren Allman, Solicitor General of Canada. Mrs. C.A. Duff. Reverend Edward Brown, S.J., former Rector of Loyola, Montreal. Mrs. Harry Blank. Dr. John W. O'Brien, Rector of Concordia University. Other messages of good wishes and appreciation have been received from people too numerous for me to attempt to read. A few of them I'd like to just tell you who sent some of them anyway. The former Deputy Minister of Education, the Premier of Nova Scotia, the President of the Association of Universities and Colleges of Canada, the rectors and principals of the universities of Quebec, education across Canada, former students throughout the world, former colleagues at Loyola and St. Mary's University, members of the faculty and staff of Loyola, fellow members of the Society of Jesus, parents of students, good friends from every walk of life. Perhaps the best I can do, Father, is to give you this file for your perusal when you have a moment. These are just some of the letters that we have received so far on behalf of Father Malone. As I move from pleasant task to pleasant task, it is now my distinct privilege to introduce several people, representatives of the Loyola community, who wish to address a few words to Father Malone. First, I'd like to call Mr. Des Lartigue, past president of the Loyola Alumni Association. Des, would you please come up?
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the head table, ladies and gentlemen, Father Malone, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Loyola Alumni Association to make a little presentation to you on their behalf, on behalf of those of us that are present with you tonight and those of us who couldn't be with you tonight. So if you just stand up here, Father Malone, perhaps this will just represent some small token of our appreciation of your long tenure.
Father, we'll leave the portrait up there afterwards, so any of you that can't see it from where you're sitting, please feel free to come up and have a look at it. Thank you very much, Des. Next, may I introduce Mrs. Julie McDonald, representative of the Loyola Evening Students Association, who has a presentation to make.
I'd just like to say on behalf of the evening students that we've enjoyed working with you immensely, and we wish you continued success in your future endeavors. This is on behalf of our evening students.
That's it. Very nice.
Hold it up, man.
Don't drop it, please.
Yes, hold it up.
Break it.
Can I show them what it is? Am I supposed to wait or just go?
Keep going on. Thank you very much, Julie.
Just get a girl.
Before I introduce the next person, I wish to make a special announcement that is closely related to his presentation. Father Malone, on behalf of quite literally hundreds of people from across Canada, from the United States, South America, and Brussels, I'd like to inform you that through the work of a special committee under the chairmanship of former alumni president Don McNaughton, and including Bob Grasby and another former alumni president, Dr. Bob Broderick, a Father Malone Scholarship Fund has been established to provide full tuition assistance to students attending the Loyola campus of Concordia University. This fund, which is held in trust by the Loyola Foundation, has reached its minimum objective, and contributions continue to come in. The Scholarship Committee is continuing its work, nevertheless, of soliciting funds to provide an ample buffer against the threats of inflation.
Scholarship in your own fund.
And I would now like to introduce the President of the Loyola Students Association, Mr. Erwin Katzoff. Erwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few very brief words. So often in the past years, Father Malone and past presidents of the LSA and myself as co-president of the LSA this year have sat across from the table from each other through long, arduous and heated debates which resulted in 3- and 4-hour Senate and Faculty Council meetings. The air is constantly punctuated by legal terms and jargon. Some of you might be familiar with them, such as point of order, call for the question, and one which I feel is very appropriate to express how I feel tonight. And if you'll excuse me in using it this way, it's point of personal privilege. It's a great honor and privilege to me that I have the opportunity to express my feelings to Father Malone on behalf of the Loyola Day Students Association. Father Malone's relationship with students and student affairs was a very important aspect of the high quality of community life at Loyola. Father Malone has demanded from students responsibility in academic and political affairs. As a result of this beneficial relationship, student participation at Loyola College is respected by faculty and administration. In speaking for the Loyola community, it could be simply said that Father Malone is Loyola. He has led this community to its unique standing of today. On behalf of the Loyola Students Association, I would like to announce that we shall be donating a free student activity fee to all students receiving a scholarship from the Father Malone Scholarship Fund, and that the Loyola Students Association is awarding the Malone Medal in honor of the Very Reverend Patrick G. Malone to the graduating student who's made an outstanding contribution to extracurricular activities. I believe what sums up your contribution at Loyola, Father Malone, is said very appropriately by André Gide. Quote, "What another would have done as well as you, do not do it. What another would have said as well as you, do not say it. Written as well, do not write it. Be faithful to that which exists nowhere but in yourself, and there make yourself indispensable." Father Malone, it is very apparent that through your long service to the Loyola community, you have made yourself indispensable. You've always stood up and spoken what you believe. And on behalf of the Loyola Day Students Association, I would like to present as a token of our appreciation.
A little nervous tonight.
I can understand that. I don't know people expect to help with this, but I'm not getting time.
When Father's given 5 minutes, he will open up the gifts. And finally, on behalf of everyone connected with Loyola, it is a pleasure, Father, to present you with this album of photographs that that's an easy word, that depicts moments, projects, achievements, and will remind you, I'm sure, of the blood, the sweat, and the tears that were part of your years at Loyola. Father, please accept this book of pictorial memories of the Malone years.
Onde é o dele? Can you put that back here, please?
In his 15 years as President of Loyola, there is surely no one more representative of spirit and perseverance that has typified Loyola during quarters of a survival and growth than Tim Slattery. Author of Loyola of Montreal, and for many years a governor and legal counsel for the college, there is no more apt per speak words of introduction we have gathered together this evening to honor, ladies and gentlemen, Timothy Slattery, QC.
Mr. Chairman, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. On June 28th, 1918, Loyola was broke. I mean, dead broke. It didn't even have a rector. 4 days later, that was Tuesday, July the 2nd, 1918, Father William Hingston arrived as the 7th full-time rector of Loyola College. He had been overseas. He had been chaplain of the Irish Canadian Rangers. And now he arrived at Loyola at its lowest point. The pipes were leaking. The roof was leaking. Loyola claimed that it had the most attractive scholastic building in Montreal, the junior building, which was true, but it didn't even have an overdraft. The first thing Father William Hingston did was to organize a drive for funds. He succeeded. $300,000 was raised, and 7 years later he left Loyola thriving. But when Father William Hingston arrived at Loyola on July 2nd, 1918, he had no idea whatsoever of what had happened 4 days before. On June 28th, 1918. Now, what happened on June 28th? On June 28th, a remarkable baby was born. On June 28th, Henry VIII was born. In 1491 at Greenwich, England. And someone else born on June 28th. Jean-Jacques, 1720. Now, 1 feet, I hope I won't forget to say June 28th. In Belfast, Ireland. Now, to remove any ambiguity, the place of birth, he was baptized Patrick. Well, on the second point, I've already covered the full period from 1491 to 18. And we just have to cover from June 28th, 1918 up to date. We're dealing with someone who has spent more than half of his adult life as a university president. But on June 8th, 1918, that remarkable baby at 12 Havana Road, Belfast, Ireland, the first of a family of 5, whose first name, you remember, was Patrick, had black hair and a beautiful smile, but it was toothless. And I have to admit, although we're talking about a university president, that baby was utterly illiterate. He couldn't read, couldn't write, he couldn't even count. He couldn't speak Greek, he couldn't speak Latin, he couldn't speak French, he could speak English, he couldn't even speak Irish. But he wasn't dumb. Now, in the interest of brevity, let me skip to August the 15th, 1959, when Father Patrick Malone arrived officially at Loyola as its rector, later to be president. We liked him from the start. And one reason why we liked him was because he agreed with us. But as we reflected, and as I reflect back on that, I've come to realize that what was happening was that we were agreeing with him. He has been with us at the head of Loyola for 15 great years of achievement. And it's significant that in those 15 years, Father Patrick Malone has known no less than 7 premiers of the province of Quebec. Maurice Duplessis, Paul Sauvé, Antonio Barrette, Jean Lesage, Daniel Johnson, Jean-Jacques Bertrand, and Robert Bourassa. All of us have benefited from his immense energy, his active, practical imagination, and his commanding competence. He has been sturdy, clear-headed, and a first-rate man of business. We have felt in those 15 years the magic of leadership. He has been able to catch the imagination, to act, to satisfy strivings, and to be the emblem. I can remember in the early years of 1960 speaking as one of the speakers to a large audience at Loyola when Loyola wasn't new, fighting for its life. And I mentioned the authorities at Loyola. After the meeting, someone came up to me, and he wasn't the best friend of the Malone. He came to me and said, you know that at Loyola, authority is singular noun? Well, I had no, and I thought about Mark often, and I don't know what I said. But keep it straight. Father Malone, the man who knew how to for a understand, to grasp it, and to accept that consensus. And generous, balanced, a man of and a man of. He has a strong temperament and an abundance of good humor. He has been a person that can't or taboos or any ill use of words. I found, and I'm sure of us have found, that Malone capable of practically any set out. When he decided on doing, he did it no delay. Been a Christian, he is particularly vigorous in rights speaking ethics. So, as of our period start, there may be some who feel the future of Loyola is uncertain. We recall Father Hingston faced on July the 2nd, 1918, when the outlook ahead was very black. I mean, did not happen 4 days on June 8th, 1918. And let us recall tonight, forward, we who was 4 days ago. Ladies and gentlemen, for one thing that I thought might sum up Father Patrick Malone. One thing that was Father Malone 15 years at Loyola. How about bring? But if the thing that carries over 50 years, but it could be flashy. And we have the paradox that in the long run, many of us would be cowards if in the short run we could be brave enough. But how about courage? The act of courage is to endure. The soul of courage is to persevere. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you a man, a friend, an educator, a leader, a priest, splendid courage, Father Patrick Malone.
Mr. Chairman, invité d'honneur, friends. I would have to say before I try to make reply to, as a priest, with all penitential and forgiving powers to those who have spoken. It is obvious to me that if we are God's pencil or God's finger, it is also equally obvious that God does not write in straight lines. But he writes in lines, you can believe that. I would like, first of all, to say to the various bodies that have associated themselves with a gift, a memorial, that I am very honored by currently the name should be associated with student with a scholarship program of considerable generosity. When Mr. Stoff was making his eloquent remarks about talking to one another across the table, he said that these remarks became somewhat heated and from time to time were put away, and was afraid for a moment, although I know it's not true, that I was going to hear a very modern classicism called the deleted expletive. I don't know why it's so funny that I was born in Belfast. Paisley with Belfast. And I would like to say that this thing, I'm particularly honored that the father of ecumenism in Montreal, I say that without any exemption whatsoever, joined among my dear friends, and I refer first to Rabbi Stern. I think it was very interesting to me that I was one time to share the honors at we got him, he was still young too. We had two of us first talk about ecumenism and I talk about education, but it occurred to me as I came to the platform that I was much more qualified to talk on ecumenism than anybody else except Dr. Stern, because I came from the ecumenical capital of Earth. I have been asked this evening what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, and definitely the answer is actually, I have this given to me on this occasion by somebody who looks like is very much a part of activities of, and that's the provincial, but I assure you that he'll think something very soon. Was when Mr. Slattery referred to the toothless bear, he making either an observation or complaint that I find that the President didn't often have to put up with. In fact, he was accused of it and using it too often. This evening, I would first of all to say also that I can't really single out the many good friends. I don't attempt to. I did want to say, though, an obituary written copiously these days. Very often, people attribute to me something that was the spontaneous and ardent desire of a whole community. Not just the English Catholic community, but in many ways a larger community than that. And I guess if I did not, however, know out in among those who were of great and courage to me and all that, besides Mr. Slattery, was late Mr. Arthur Main, a businessman, and if I have any business acumen, I much that I don't have very much business and that I would depend to I than I the best and beautiful. I'd like to say also that I was asked tonight, and I'm still going to do that, and I help from the other various tables, but I would like to say that I have found it to be wrong for me to the minority in any sense that would not take account of all the other minorities, the needs of the majority in Quebec. I have a profound respect for Canadians. I have a concern or apprehensions. I that one of us can accept some of the legislation that is put on both sides of the legitimacy, and that is important for all of us to have confidence that together we can make Quebec this can. I ask you to study exists proposed to us, study proceed, respect to what are proposing for, and I believe we can to be among the minorities and majority of the world. I think I would like to also, besides the members of the family, special debt of gratitude to my judge, who over years now, 1936, have put, I think, charity did not put the gift that Mr. kindly in before us. I thought that, since I asked to speak to you this evening, some words, I would like to speak to you about learning the community. I think it's interesting to note that the scholar Chardin has left a spiritual name says to the Christian first, to yourself. It's quick to acknowledge that books about the spiritual life do not generally throw light on this phase of Christian perfection. Perhaps it seems too obvious to mention, to belong completely non-divine. Possibly it is too dangerous to be insisted upon. These books take for granted, and it often comes as news to is a Christian duty, a true Christian duty, to grow the other, make one's talent is part of the Catholic vision, a vision shared by other Christians, by the great, and by other cultures. This vision, the world is maturing, evil in evil, who nap in discovery and beautification. Now, central to this development, of course, in the world about us, Bay, the Age, Liberate, Concord University, peace in the Middle East. Although very much in the thinking stage, vision hopes for a better world, they are causes developed. In some ways, they provide a paradigm for the person who can achieve a plant to blossom fruit, a pledge that the future will honor the past and the present. Between process and the person on the other side is difference, commitment and itself, transcending any usefulness for external objectives, however urgent or noble. The human, by learning, can influence for good or processes other persons. But human excellence is measured by the self-fulfillment. We all agree with the criteria worth can translate as selfish, self-centered, commit, and generate applauding unity. Indeed, all of us turn guilt into sickness, muddle-headed, or mystery. And we have some examples. There's Dachau, Watergate, Gulag, Hiroshima, which taught shame and Burnett, aided on astray. And on a less scale, witness. Learning, essentially a work by mind on the mind, or in the mind. Tools in our society cater for all things, all sorts of individual and wants. They exist on the mind, to share, expand knowledge. Campus acts or records not doing, being fit of body, social eating, objectives of college, subordinate to the care of the mind. There are no mistake accomplished, but they were treacherous, guided by reason, inquiring, and discipline, and developed reason. Now, it's fair to say in the city in which we live today, some misuse comes from good intent person who charge the heart to speak for the mind, with it effects for the mind and for the here I experience. You've come across people, I'm sure, were wounded by the cruelty of the contemporary society, and burning to relieve the relentless inner wish. Something has to reach their pain, their emptiness. Something must be resuscitated from stifling contempt. To pursue the emotions, minds, and they close a too dear race or too fleeting a upon them to be described as one radiant definition of things, which is the process by which an attribute around the brain correctly a dialogue of person who talk, whose knowledge serves into rebellion, is the mind in a fullness of self. True learning must follow a straightened course. I think this is one of the things that makes it interesting to be confident, because that's our course. I'm of the group in New York State. I am. In fact, I thought I would tell you this joke because and I think they're such good friends. I want to have out from the metropolitan would have a bureau saying college for lecture, and they nothing less will do. And they got back there and a president. And I have been good to me this evening. Can't remember a veteran in this practice. Nicholas Mutler at Columbia said he would take an orphanage or prison. He said, in the second you don't have alumni. Learning as an enhancement of the person, of the appreciation arises from the community. Russian and Britain among the fundamental aims of the mission of a common relationship. Bob Robbins says we do nothing in mold that capably is for function of individuals, back cultural, a healthy society. I think bears education that we tend to lose our nerve about the sharp between sharp between what is so residual. And that be very well for little purposes, but it's authority. And I of the great Jollimer, now let be of the not a lofty say, the eye of the heart, antidote for ill. It isn't of any that respect unifies the self, fulfills the word that builds upon education. It's all that what is out there, the engulfing network, the math, the lumpia, faceless earth. But there is something attainable, not clockwork. A organization that reduces me cog in a per economic machine that calls number that wants me or out of deference not to me, computer, endless means and control. I can accept price consumer living. I can even pour exotic bowls of a human community. A community is a band of elves trying to go leave one another and not simply as co-agitators. There must be ability to and for group, telling a sense for the individual that he does not sit in it of concrete steel, poking the properly magnetized painful slot in the wall will open the door. I know that this sounds like low travesty, but people today obsess on like that. To give thanks, thus provided of home. There may be some here this evening who all is not as fictitious and remote as we should like to think. Shall we call up Canute, STEM, the technology? Shall we enlist Luddite?